Hello and welcome back to Aggie Knits. Thank you so much for joining me today for episode 2 of my knitting podcast. This episode is going to just go over some of the colorwork projects that I have done in the past 6 months. So here we have the framed sweater by Andrea Mowry, the woodfolk sweater by the Petite Knitter, the nocturnal jumper by the Petite Knitter, and a self-drafted little cowl by me that is a free pattern on Ravelry. So let's just get into it. This is the Petite Knitter's nocturnal jumper. This is the first colorwork pattern that I ever did, and I love it so much. It's just perfect for October and just the whole Thanksgiving season, spooky season, and I think I knit this up in September. So these are all fairly recent. This is the first one that I did, and it is a top-down circular yoke colorwork construction. It has a corrugated rib detail for the collar, the cuffs, and the hem. I used Knitting for Olive's Heavy Merino for this project, and this is in the colorways Copper, Pearl Gray, and Coal. I think that she recommends something Dreamer yarn for this pattern, but I couldn't find a place local to me that had it that I could ship from. And it also, there were a lot of colors that were out when I was originally looking for it. I think they had all the colors on their Spanish site, but not on their US site. And I just ended up finding a different one for it. And I think it worked out really well. The only qualm that I have with this yarn is that it is fairly splitty when you first start to use it. You get used to that very quickly. Oh, and it does pill a little bit. Let me show you. So honestly, I shouldn't say a little bit. It pills a bit. Let me get out of the way. Yeah, so just all those little spots right there. I've never depilled it, so there is also that. However, it is a fairly recent knit, so I don't really think I should have to depill it, but it's kind of like that all over. You can even see it a lot on the lighter color, which I know is normally a little more difficult to do. And this cat in particular has quite a lot. Let me show you that. Yeah, there you go. So we're getting a lot of that pilling right there, which, I mean, it is kind of one of those like mid-tier in the price range natural fiber yarns. So I understand that it's not like the best quality. However, it's still a little expensive. So I don't want to give too many excuses for that. How does the yarn wear? I think it wears really nicely. It softens up so much after you wash it the first time. So I guess I mean, it's a good yarn. I'll give it, just like to rate it, probably a 7 out of 10 because it checks most of the boxes. It's pretty warm, but not too warm, which I really appreciate because I tend to get hot super quickly. And oh, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but this is the Polsey sweater that I'm wearing now by Kate Tarantieva, just to put that out there. And the Petite Knitter for this project, I just love her patterns. I am doing a test knit for her right now, and it's a secret test knit, which is very exciting. Super excited for that, so stay tuned for a later episode mid-February after the pattern drops. I'll post a video about that. But this was my first introduction to corrugated rib detailing as well. I love it. I think it's such a nice touch because the top of this pattern, I would say, is already pretty busy with the color work that's in the yoke, but it's just something about the vertical color work here. It doesn't detract at all from the yoke, whatever is happening there. It kind of just brings it upward to your face, which I really appreciate because I tend to get just kind of lost when I wear things that have a lot of patterns. And I definitely feel that way about my framed one, but not too much. I'll get to that later. So this pattern is very easy to follow in my opinion. Having done this for my first color work project, I would say it was a little ambitious to do a 3-color color work for my first, but I'm glad I did it. And I mentioned in my last video, this is also the pattern that I learned to do duplicate stitch in because I made a lot of errors, particularly with this band right here. I made the error of just kind of memorizing the colorwork pattern for that row and just going with it. And then once I messed up with one stitch with that, the whole row was off. So I wasn't really looking at the rest of the pattern while I did it. My bad, but I think it worked out. The colorwork chart is very easy to follow as well. I think she starts it in the bottom right-hand corner, which I think is fairly typical for them. However, I did find some colorwork charts online to practice with that started at different points, and that was pretty confusing, so I kind of just went right into this. I love this sweater. I love this pattern. It was so fun to knit up. You just don't get bored with it because you start out with the corrugated rib and then immediately you go into increases. Then from the increases, you just start up with your pattern. Oh, I did actually. I noticed a little mistake I made right there. I'm not going to fix that. But you go right into the color work details, everything. And then once you get to the sleeves, you have this corrugated hem to just zoom toward with that. And I loved it. Something I would change about this is I would do a longer hem corrugated rib detail here. I do it longer, and I would also change the cast off method that I did, because I do believe that that is the reason why, here you can see, it kind of curls up, and I just don't like the way that looks. I'd probably also add an inch to the body of it, which I actually may do because this is a worsted weight, so it really wouldn't take that long, and I'm very against sweater surgery. I'm scared of it, so I'm not going to do that. But I love this sweater, and once again, this is the Nocturnal Jumper by the Petite Knitter. All right, this second pattern is the Framed Sweater by Andrea Mowry. I knit this one up using Kelborn Woolen's Scout in the shade Mulberry Heather for the frame, essentially. And this yarn is 100% wool. It is a sport weight yarn. No, it is a DK weight yarn, and it comes in 274 yards per skein at roughly $18, depending upon where you get it. The background color, which is my white, not really white, it is called soft green gray. So this color is from Biches and Bouches, and it is their Le Cotton and Alpaca. It's a blown yarn, which I think gives it the loveliest halo. It is so fluffy and soft, comfortable, and for a blown yarn, it is very easy to work with. I tend to find that my needles kind of slip into blown yarn, or I feel a little nervous using them because they sometimes feel delicate. But this one, no, it works perfectly. I love it. And yes, that is Biches and Bouches soft green gray. Now, lastly, we have this blue color, which I want to add, this is a scrappy project because I kind of just grabbed what I had in my stash. I had this left over from my Norma Jean turtleneck from Fable Knitwear, and I just used it for the frame. And that is why at some point in here, you can see that this blue has a different shade in it, because for the more prominent quilt pattern, I used Bad Sheep Yarns Merino Worsted in the shade Impressions, and for some of the parts, I paired it with the Bad Sheep Yarn Fingering Weight Witch King from the Lord of the Rings collection that she put out, that Marcy put out. And I love it. I did run out of that a little bit for the sleeves though, so it's not on the sleeves. This pattern was my first full body color work. It is a bottom up construction, and it does involve, flat color work. Flat color work was crazy. That was really difficult for me to get used to, but once I started to get used to it, it was just so much more fun. And it was one of those things that made this pattern all the more enjoyable, because once I got a little bored of doing these 2 repeats of the pattern right here, which is essentially 4 blocks, then I just had a whole new experience with that color work section, doing it flat, and it really just reignited my motivation for the project. My only, I shouldn't say only, I don't know if there's more, but as I go, I'll come up with them. One of my issues with this pattern, and let's just say my rendition of this pattern, is that the fabric is so dense, probably because I used 2 very worsted yarns and it's all color work with that, but It is very dense and it's 3/4 sleeve, which I did mention in my last video does not really make a lot of sense to me. Seems a little counterproductive there because it seems if you're going for warmth, maybe have the whole sleeve, but that's probably just because how dense my fabric is. And is it that? I think that might be my only issue with the pattern. Yeah, and I have enough yarn to where I can go back and make these full-length sleeves, which I think I will do because it's worth it. I love this sweater. I wore it a lot when I first finished it, but I haven't worn it much lately because it is so warm in my house now, and I don't tend to go out too much anymore because I do have a 2-month-old now. So that keeps me indoors, which keeps me out of this sweater, which is a shame, but I'll have to put it to better use. Now, I do plan to do another version of this in a linen cotton blend, and that one is going to be 3/4 sleeve. It's going to be linen and cotton, and I believe I'm actually also doing it in a DK because this sweater, it's too warm for me to wear as frequently as I would like. And for all the work that goes into this sweater, I want to be wearing it a lot, so that's going to have to happen. It also really inspired me to make my own colorwork pattern, and that's where this one comes in. This is my Potter and the Clay cowl. It is given that name because these diamonds here, it kind of just gave me the idea of the etchings that a potter would make on the bottom of a piece of work that they're working on to keep it stuck on the turntable. It just kind of made me think as I was going through this whole phase of life where I was still pregnant at the time, where I was going to be introducing a new life to the world, where I was going to have to come to terms with the differences that life would bring in my daily routine, and just how I felt like I was just on that turntable. And I was being formed by that potter. But at the same time, I was the potter for this little guy who was in here, who is now sleeping in his bassinet. So it was just a big season of change for me. And I felt what better way to mark it than by pouring out into this creative medium something else to create. And that is where this came in, Potter and the Clay cowl. It is on Ravelry for free. I knit this up using Appalachian Yarn Co.'s Ginger and Chocolate Sport. And I'm going to put some pictures here for that because Ginger and Chocolate are actually the names of the alpaca on the farm that this yarn came from. I got to meet them, and it was such a fun experience. Appalachian Yarn Co. is about 25 minutes away from me, and it's just this gorgeous little farm, and she has these wonderful yarns there. She has yarns from some friends that she also has who have farms in Ohio too. They ship her the fiber, she makes yarn, sells it at her shop. I think it's so cool. Now, it does say that these were sports. However, I do believe that the ginger one, which is the ginger color, is actually probably more like a light worsted. It feels like it. This is knit in the round, and you go straight from the corrugated rib detailing to the colorwork motif, just right through. There is a needle change size. I forget what it goes to, but it's all listed in the pattern. You just bind off, and then you crisscross the center, sew it all together. Now, one thing that I wish I did with this is I wish that I made it a little bit shorter, the corrugated rib section, so that it kind of just hugs instead of kind of falling in the front. But I did amend that in the pattern, so no need to do that on your own, unless of course you're going through it, you want to change something there. This is the warmest cowl I have ever worn, and I don't think that it's because of my pattern per se, but simply because it is a colorwork cowl, meaning 2 strands all the time of dense alpaca just around your neck. And actually, it is 1, 2, 3, 4. It is 4 strands because you got the front and the back of that tube that you're knitting in. So this thing, it's warm. It is really warm. I definitely recommend it. I don't know, might be a little biased, but this is, again, the Potter and the Clay cowl by Aggie K Knits. All right, and lastly, this piece, I don't even want to call it a sweater, I call it a piece. It feels like a piece of art that I made. And the Petite Knitter just has that way of making projects where you feel almost like you're painting as you go along. I don't know how else to explain it, but you just come in with a new color and it is so exciting. Now, I did make a lot of it. Oh, this is the woodfolk sweater by the Petite Knitter, by the way. I made a lot of modifications to the coloring. Now, her version has 2 colors, but I felt very inspired by what is it? I forget the name of the pattern, but I will put it either here or just in the link below. She uses these colors for a kid's sweater. And I was like, I need this sweater, but I also wanted it to be in fingering weight because hers was worsted. I wanted fingering weight. So the designs seemed very comparable to me, just applied new color to it. This is a top-down circular colorwork yoke construction. Again, it seems that that's her favorite type to do. I don't think she has any that are not, but I could be very easily proven wrong. I kind of did my own thing for the sleeves here. They are bracelet length, and that seems to be what I tend toward. And it is knit up using the Knitting for Olive Merino. I used the shades Bordeaux, Copper, Petroleum Green, and Pearl Gray. This yarn, once again, is a little splitty. I think it feels a little bit more splitty than the Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino because it's knit using size 2 needles. So this was quite a project. Fingering weight, size 2 needles, color work. The color work really aided in my completion of this project though, because just doing a full fingering weight sweater like this one, you get real bored. You really do. You get really bored. So just having this color work, it was great. I guess I'll just talk about the pattern itself. The pattern itself was relatively easy to follow, I think. Yeah, the only issue that I had is for some reason my increases here for the German short rows came out pretty large, which, oh, here it is. Let me get that. So like right there, they just seem really large, and I love German short rows. I'm pretty good at them, so I don't know what happened with that. I feel like maybe she didn't do German short rows and it was some other variation. That's the only thing that I would do differently next time. I'd either pay more attention or I'd just do German short rows instead of what is offered in the pattern. That's the only thing that I dislike about it. This is probably also one of my occasions of having pretty clean sleeve pickups. Let me see if that'll get, because it's trying to get me. Yeah. So the sleeve pickups are pretty clean in my opinion. I'm very proud of that. And I also changed the collar. I did a double folded collar, and actually what I did was I just did a regular standard collar, and then at the end I picked up stitches all the way around the collar, knit them up, and then folded it over, sewed it all together. And I did that because sometimes my double folded collars end up a lot wider than I want them to be. I need to figure out a way to avoid that. It's probably very simple, but this was just my way of doing it this time, and it worked out really nicely. I do wish that I had size 1 needles so that I could have done a smaller gauge for the ribbing details. And I think those are the only things that I would change if I did it again, which I won't do because I think this is enough. One other thing that I did change as I did it was I believe these are supposed to look like little crosses, but I omitted the center one. And now I think they look like little snow angels, which I love. I think that is such a sweet detail for a Christmas sweater. And you can see that I was just eager to wear it because I have not even sewn in those last 2 ends. And it really is just the last 2. So I got to get on my game for that. Yeah. So that is the woodfolk sweater by the Petite Knitter. And finally, I just want to give like a little shout out to this sock. This is the first time that I ever used 2 different colors in a knitting project. So while I did not do color work per se, I did switch colors, which that was fun for me. This is the vanilla sock by the Crazy Sock Lady, which I just love. I love that little name there. That's great. This is Bad Sheep yarn yet again, and it is Merlot, and this shade is discontinued. But I feel like it was like Wild Iris or something. I don't remember. Now for this, I did a 3 knit, 3 purl cuff. And I do like the look of that, but I think I'm just going to go for the standard 1x1 next time. This is my favorite heel flap gusset construction. I love that so much. I just think that these decreases turned out so well. I think this was my 3rd pair of socks. So that was just really fun to see on a lighter type of yarn there. That was really fun. And yeah, oh, this is kind of funny. So I'm losing some light here, but for my first several projects, I only knit through the back loop. Like, I didn't know that was a thing that I wasn't supposed to do. So when I wear these, there's just a lot of blank space once it stretches around my foot. So that's just something to know for next time. Yeah, but this is the vanilla sock by the Crazy Sock Lady. All right, and that sums it up. These are my last 6 months of colorwork projects. Again, I have the frame sweater by Andrea Mowry, the Potter and the Clay cowl by Aggie Knitz, which is a free pattern, the Nocturnal jumper by the Petite Knitter, and the woodfolk sweater, again by the Petite Knitter, and this sock, which I won't really count here. But yeah. Thank you so much again for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and comment down below what your next colorwork project is going to be. I'm going to be making a video within the coming week about my 2025 plans, and I would love to see some inspiration down there so I can pick some colorwork because I've yet to find any for my plans, but clearly I enjoy it. So drop that down below, and yeah, thank you again for watching. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.